Hello everyone and welcome to The Nook, where we want to explore some stories from the past to help us relax, calm down and fall asleep. So come in, the fire is warm, find your comfortable spot. For tonight's story, we'll be visiting the world of the medieval scribe. Listen. That is the sound of the world being saved. It is not the clash of swords, nor the proclamation of a king. It is the sound of immense, deliberate quiet. The sound of a single hand moving with practice grace in the cold air of a stone room. This is the sound of the scriptorium, the writing room. Today, we think of history in terms of noise, of grand events and loud pronouncements. But for centuries, the knowledge of the past, the wisdom of the ancients, and the sacred stories of faith were carried forward not by an army, but by a silent, patient few. Join me and let us step out of our loud, fast world and into the quiet, meticulous life of the medieval scribe. Let's explore the world they built, not with stone or steel, but with ink, patience, and time. Chapter 1. The Foundation of the Word. Before a single word can be written, a surface must be prepared, a page must be born, and this birth is not a simple act. It is a slow, physical, and often grueling transformation. The scribe's work does not begin with paper. The foundation for a book, meant to last 1,000 years, was vellum, from calf, or parchment, from a sheep or a goat. The process was an art form itself. The hide was first washed in a running stream, then soaked for days in caustic lime bath to loosen the hair before being scraped clean on a large wooden beam. The movements were not aggressive, but long, smooth, and repetitive, a rhythm of purification. Once cleaned, the skin was stretched on a massive wooden frame, pulled tighter and tighter until it was thin, almost translucent. A drumhead resonating with the potential for words. Then came the lunulum, a crescent-shaped knife. With a lifetime of practice, the parchmenter would scrape the surface, making it impossible smooth, uniform and ready. Finally, a fine powder of chalk was rubbed into the pores, absorbing the last traces of grease. What was once the living coat of an animal was now something else entirely. Strong yet delicate, smooth to the touch. This single sheet, the result of weeks of labor, is the scribe's canvas. It is the quiet, waiting foundation for the word. Chapter 2. The Soul of the Line. The page was ready. It waits in the cold, still air, but it is empty. To give it a voice, the scribe needs ink, and like the parchment, the ink is not bought, it is made. The most common, most enduring ink of the medieval world was from iron gall ink. Its creation feels like a form of magic. It begins with a walk in the forest to find oak galls. These are not fruit. They are a tree's reaction to a tiny wasp laying its eggs. A rather beautiful result for such a strange intrusion. These galls, rich in tannic acid, were crushed and steeped in water for days. The second ingredient was iron sulfate, often sourced from old iron nails left to rust in vinegar. The final piece was a binder, gum arabic, the hardened sap of the acacia tree. Now the alchemy begins. The tannic acid solution is strained, the iron solution is added, and here a quiet miracle occurs. The pale liquid, upon meeting the iron, slowly begins to transform, darkening from brown to a deep, cloudy gray, and finally to a rich, velvety black. When first applied to the vellum, the ink is a pale gray, but as the air touches it, as the iron oxidizes, it bites into the parchment, darkening over hours into a permanent, waterproof black. This was not just a recipe. It was a responsibility. A bad batch of ink could fade or worse, eat right through the page, leaving a lace of empty letters. This dark, flowing liquid was the soul of the line. Chapter 3. The Hand of the Scribe. The page is made. The ink is mixed. Now the final instrument must be perfected, the quill. The best quills came from the 5 or 6 outermost flight feathers of a large bird, most often a goose, and specifically from the left wing. The bird's politics were irrelevant, of course, but a feather from the left wing curved outward to the right, giving a right-handed scribe a clearer line of sight. A freshly plucked feather is too soft, so it was cured in hot sand to harden the barrel. Then the scribe would take a small, incredibly sharp knife, a penknife in its original purpose, and begin the true art. A deep slit was cut into the tip to act as an ink reservoir. The sides were sloped to a point, and the very tip was squared off, its width determining the thickness of the line. This simple object, a feather, was now a high-precision instrument. Light in the hand, but strong at the point. The point is ready, and so is the day. Chapter 4. The Rhythm of Silence. Long before sunrise, the monastery is awake. After prayers and a simple meal, the scribes make their way to the scriptorium. They enter in silence. This is the cardinal rule. Communication is done through a small set of formal hand gestures. The room is cold. Fire was the greatest enemy of a library, so the scriptorium was often unheated. The only warmth was the light from the windows and the intense focus of the work itself. A scribe's first task is to rule the page, using a lead stylus to impress a faint, invisible grid that will govern every letter's height and spacing. Then the writing begins. Imagine the focus. Each letter is not a single stroke, but a construction, a series of separate, deliberate marks. It is not writing, it is painting words. This is why a single page could take a full day. The only sounds are the rhythmic scratch and lift of the quills, the rustle of a turning page, the distant sound of a choir. The body aches, the back cramps, the eyes burn, but the work continues. The rule of St. Benedict stated that idleness was the enemy of the soul. This work was a prayer, a silent, devotional act. The sun traces its slow arc across the sky. The bells ring for prayer, for meals, and then for the day's end. The precious pages are stored, and the scribes retreat into the gathering darkness, their minds filled with the shape of letters, their hands stained with ink. And tomorrow, they will do it all again. Chapter 5. A Light in the Darkness. For many books, a clean text was enough, but for the most important manuscripts, the work was not yet finished. Now came the Illuminator. As the scribe gave the book its body, the Illuminator gave it its soul. And this was the moment of color, of light. The word illumination comes from the Latin illuminare, to light up. Pigments were sourced from the earth and from painstaking trade. Blue, the most prized, from grinding the semi-precious stone lapis lazuli, brought thousands of miles from Afghanistan. But the most magical element was gold. A sheet of gold, beaten so thin a single breath could send it flying. The illuminator would paint a sticky base, called gesso, on the page, breathe on it and make it tacky, and lay the golden leaf down. They would then burnish it with a smooth stone, and the dull shield would transform into a surface so bright it seemed to generate its own light. Around this glowing gold, they would paint. A capital letter would bloom into a garden of vines. Tiny, perfect scenes would appear in the margins. It was here that the artist's own creativity and view of the world could shine. In the dim candlelight of the church, the gold would catch the flicker and the page would seem to come alive. It was a window into heaven, a light in the darkness. Chapter 6. The Weight of Centuries. Months, sometimes years have passed. The scribe's work is done. The pages are sewn together, their spines reinforced. Heavy wooden boards become the covers, held shut by a metal clasp. The book is no longer a collection of pages. It is an object. It has weight, presence, authority. And sometimes, on the very last page, the scribe was permitted to add a personal note, a colophon. Here, the anonymous hand finally gets a voice. One might read, "This book was finished by the monk John. Pray for a soul." Another, more honest scribe wrote, "The writing is finished. Thank God." And my favorite, from one exhausted soul, "As the sailor rejoices to see the shore, so the scribe rejoices to see the final page." These small, human traces collapse the centuries. We feel the ache in their back, the relief in their heart. This book, this object of immense devotion, will be placed in the monastery's library, and in waiting, it performed its most vital function. It survived. It survived fires, floods, and wars. It carried the poetry of Virgil, the philosophy of Aristotle, and the stories of the gospel through the bottleneck of time, when civilization itself seemed to be hanging by a thread. Everything we have just witnessed, all of it was an act of preservation, an act of profound, quiet faith in the future. So the next time you feel overwhelmed by the noise of the modern world, remember the scriptorium. Remember the power of quiet work, of patient dedication. The scribe's world was one of slowness, of focus. Their legacy is not just in the words they copied, but in the silence they kept. A silence so deep you can still feel it, echoing down through the ages. A silence that invites you, now, to rest.